I don't know if there's any benefit to putting the statue down if you already have threat. It's good to pull with the statue sometimes. What I like to do is I'll run in, toss the statue, everybody will attack it, and it'll be pulsing a taunt, and I'll just taunt off my statue, and that AoE taunts everything. So the statue's really good at picking up extras and adds, but honestly, you can run in yourself and just open with a keg smash and get everybody's attention and keep it for the rest of the fight. I don't know about you guys, but I remember a time in Burning Crusade what comes to memory, but I'm not sure. Maybe this was the case even in vanilla, and it definitely was the case in vanilla, where tanks weren't just given threat. You were never just handed threat. You had to actually sacrifice mitigation in your gear to balance threat generation, which I basically meant you had to either put on more avoidance or more hit rating, just so you can maintain aggro. I kind of miss that. I kind of miss losing threat being, you know, part of the game's mechanics. Like, I don't know. It seems, I guess I can see how it's frustrating. You get that one guy that's geared in your group, and he's doing 70% of your group's damage, and he's just tanking everything. But of course, like, he has the stamina to do that if he does pull aggro, but it shouldn't get that severe. Like, the person shouldn't have to do 70% of the group's damage by himself for him to pull aggro off you. I don't know, like, but there should be a real danger to that. I remember in BC, I say BC specifically because I used to run with an enhancement shaman guy. Like, I was a paladin myself, and I would tank sometimes, but this enhancement shaman, me and him, we'd run side by side all the time, and he would constantly get these, like, the stars would align and all his procs would go off all at once, and his aggro, his threat on the meter would just go poof. And I remember tanking, like, for him and him pulling, like, with all the stars aligning, like, doing this huge amount of DPS and pulling threat off of me. And it was easy for me at the time because paladins had righteous defense, so I could literally just target him, righteous defense off of him, and up to 3 targets would pull immediately. So what was nice about that was his huge amount of threat that he would generate, you would think would be a bad thing, but I actually made that weakness that tanks would have against some DPS that would do that a strength, because I could actually righteous defense off of him and then immediately do like an AoE and have threat on everything, because you piggyback off of the highest DPS's threat when you taunt off of them. So if you pull a group and you're doing like 30 threat per second, and then your DPS has an explosion or whatever, and they're doing like 800 threat per second all of a sudden, when you taunt off of them and follow it up with an ability immediately after, taunting brings you up to 800 threat per second, and then doing an ability after that gives you another 200 threat per second. So you're at 1,000 threat per second just at the initial pull, and you can maintain that the rest of the time. And what was nice about that was with the enhancement shaman and all the elements or whatever and stars aligning and their DPS would shoot up, what was cool about that was it only happened like once every few minutes that he would pop off like that. And once every few minutes I would just get a fuck ton of threat on that thing, whatever we were attacking. And after that, like, the rest of the encounter I could almost go AFK and keep threat, because I've just piggybacked off of all of the threat that he generated. But and the reason why it mattered so much that, you know, somebody pulled off of you and all that back then was there was a real chance of dying. Like, something would look at you, and it's almost like the M pluses, I guess you could say, whenever threat gets, or whenever damage that the enemies do gets actually really dangerous. But yeah, just randomly, you know, he would pull off the tank and get one shot. And he's like, he had to go back and read his combat logs because it would happen so fast just to find out what killed him. And yeah, that was really interesting. I really liked that the way threat used to work. and how it was actually really dangerous if that was the case. Like, in some cases, a healer could just, like a resto druid specifically, could start throwing hots on you and generating threat before you've even actually tagged everything before each pull. So I could run in, like I'm going after this guy, I could actually tag him, and the healer would start hotting me up, and just with that small amount of threat, the healer would out-threat me with big enough heals, and the healer was at, you know, risk for dying. It was like a real threat that the healer would die. So I guess all that to say, like, it's been a while since I've seen threat as a mechanic in the game. And if you understand how threat mechanics work, if you know you have to go in and hit something first, if you want a good lead on the tables or whatever, like, I don't know, it's not as important anymore. Most of your procs and automatic, you know, abilities or whatever kind of do most of the work for you. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's the Ox statue. This has got me kind of like reminiscing about threat mechanics, because that's really kind of like a mechanic of the monk, like getting and maintaining aggro on fresh mobs and stuff. But back then you used to have like 1 or 2 abilities, that was it. And those were your threat generating abilities. Everything else was like filler and damage reduction. Like I'm thinking of a